Hello, welcome to CHHS 385. In this course, we're going to be covering survey design, planning, and in that design, you'll be doing things like data collection and data management. And throughout the semester, we're also going to learn how to present your data and also how to do the actual analysis. You'll be learning specifically about levels of measurement, central tendency, levels of dispersion, qualitative methods of analysis as well. And you'll also learn about statistical inferences. You'll learn about specifically something called a chi-square test and other types of tests of significance. And you'll be applying all of these new skills on your final project. And your final project will be essentially designing your own survey and applying all of these skills on analyzing your survey and then presenting the results of that analysis in a presentation and also a final report on your study design and survey. So in order to begin this course, we have to really take a step back and think about what we're interested in, right? So you're in this class, you're interested in, most likely, most of you are interested in some sort of social question, whether it's someone's exposure to I don't know, an environment like built environments, and they and cholesterol levels or walkability of neighborhoods or crime rates or abortion rates. All of these are sort of social phenomenon, and they all have impacts on your health, or may not have impacts on your health. But the question really for you is, what is your question? So it all begins with a simple question of how you're trying to answer a social phenomenon research question. So if your question is what causes why being sort of the outcome, then you're really looking for two or three or a multitude of different inputs of just looking at what causes something else. There's not really a question of something specifically causing why. You're actually just not sure of what causes why. So you're just going to find a number of potential causes of why. Another more specific question, which is a more common question, which is, does X cause Y? That would be a question you would also most often see in sort of the biological sciences or a number of other sort of hard sciences, if you will. And the hard sciences would find, is there a link between, or is there a causal link between someone taking a drug A, and say lowered cholesterol, versus someone just taking a placebo and lowered cholesterol. So does X truly cause, or does this drug truly cause a lowered cholesterol? So that is sort of the preeminent research question often seen in the sort of biological sciences. Your question most likely in the social sciences, especially with a survey, will be, is X related to Y? And that is to say that you're not able to really truly answer whether X causes Y, because there's a lot of other factors that perhaps go into that relationship between X and Y. But you could potentially see a relationship between X and Y. And this relationship, or the differences between these two scenarios, does X cause Y or is X related to Y, will be further expounded upon in a future presentation on causal inference or causality. But for the purposes of this particular presentation, we're only just concerned about knowing that most surveys, in fact, I would say nearly all surveys, are really only able to answer the question, is X related to Y, or is X associated with Y? Now, whether that relationship is causal or not is another situation. And then another type of research question you potentially might see, not necessarily in this class, but you might, is the relationship between X and Y mediated by another factor, by A, for example? So do you think that the relationship between X and Y is causal? Do you think it's, or do you not really know if it's causal, but you think it's related? And if you think it's related, is there potentially also something else out there that could potentially be a mediator between X and Y? For example, if you are doing a research on lung cancer and you've surveyed a bunch of lung cancer patients in a hospital, and you found a bunch of patients in a hospital, and you found that patients with lighters in their pockets were more often more often lung cancer patients in the hospital than patients without lighters in their pockets. Well, does lighter in a pocket really cause lung cancer? Probably not. So we could say X is related to Y, absolutely. We could say that the presence of a lighter in someone's pocket is related to the lung cancer in that patient. But there's potentially another factor going on there, and that mediator in this case would be smoking, right? So X would be X would be the lighter, Y would be lung cancer, and A would really be the idea of actually smoking cigarettes. So we always have to consider the potential for another factor, right? And then, of course, there's also the possibility of any combination of any of these research questions combining into a very large, broad research question. But the more refined, more simple, straightforward research question you have is X related to Y, for example, the easier it will be for you to answer that question. So usually, just unfortunately for all of us here, in case you didn't know, there are very few research projects in the world that are completely new. So anything you are doing or researching has likely been researched, at least peripherally, in the past by other researchers, and probably done and published a lot on it, most likely, most of the time. And so what you need to do when you come up with your research question, say, oh, you're interested in, I don't know, the number of hours a student works outside of school and the impact on their GPA. And I only use that as an example because that was a very common question last year. It's not really a social sciences question, although I guess it could be in the sense that, students who are in the need, in financial need and need to work more, perhaps also might be at a greater risk for having lower GPA. That's a fair question, yes. So, but what you need to ask yourself is, what have other people or other researchers done before? So you would try to find previous research that have looked at something similar, and you would ask, well, how does this question really relate to the question you're doing? How does this question relate to other research that has actually been done in the past? And, a great deal of your research is actually, your research meaning the research question you have, but the prior stuff done before that, is really just testing established theories. So if you're looking at something that is completely novel, then it is difficult if you ever wanted to pursue it in terms of publishing it or having, say it validated, if you will. It's hard to validate something that's novel, right? It's really, a lot of research we do is sort of looking at what someone else has done and trying to replicate it with your own data, your own scenario, your own setting, your own people, your own population, and to sort of validate what other people have found. And maybe perhaps from that you can create new sort of novel research questions as well. So how do we design a research project? So first of all, you want to define the purpose of your project. Say you're interested in I'm interested in the impact of lower economic status of students and the sort of quality of their grades. So now you have to really sort of specify exactly what you mean by the quality of their grades and the low economic status of a student, okay? So I'm going to now say specifically, I'm interested in the impact of low grades defined as less than a 2.0 GPA and say low economic status, and that would be defined as I don't know, say less than the poverty level for California, for example. Now, looking at students alone, most of students, or nearly all students, will be under the poverty level. So perhaps we could expand it to a larger population to, say, the poverty level and the general population as a whole, something along those lines. So now you need to choose a research method. So you have your research question. Okay, I'm really interested in the impact of a working student on his GPA, whether it be greater than or less than a 2.0. And working or not working is sort of the exposure or the predictor variable I'm thinking about. So an easy research method would be probably a survey design, but in that case, and in your case, for this class, it will always be a survey. So now you need to decide how you're going to measure the results. So in your survey, you would have to define how you're going to measure working or non-working student and GPA, whether it's high or low, or you're just going to ask them their GPA and let them respond. It just depends on how you design your study. You need to also decide whom or what you're going to study. So are you going to study students? Are you going to study professors? And professors obviously wouldn't be asking grades, but you could ask professors another type of research question. You could also ask specifically only working students questions if you were changing your research question a little bit. You could also collect your empirical data. In other words, you collect the actual data from the people that you are choosing to study. So if you choose to study students on CSUMB campus, then you would go out and you would collect that data in a survey. And that is collecting empirical data, the actual data that you are going to use to analyze, to answer the research question. So you process your data. So processing the data basically means you are collecting all your surveys, you're putting them in a big spreadsheet, and you're cleaning the data. You're making it ready to analyze. And this is all, that's probably the majority of your time actually will be processing the data to make it digestible and easy to analyze. Analyzing the data actually, once you know what you're doing, shouldn't take all that long. It's just knowing what you're doing. That's the harder part. And also interpreting those results. And then lastly, you're also going to report those findings. So now you've analyzed your data, you come up with a bunch of results, you put together a report, and you put together a report and a presentation, and you present it. You do your findings. Guess what? We found that there is no relationship between working students and low GPA, or we found that there is a relationship between working students and low GPA.